Therwan Sarnai. We are about to begin today's sermon, and just before we get started, I'd be grateful if someone could confirm that this audio is audible to you. Okay. Thank you for confirming that. Let us begin then. And just as a reminder, we are having some bad weather today, so please do expect some interruption. We hope that we don't have any trouble, but the internet connection here is susceptible to disconnections when there's bad weather, which you know from previous experience. But let's hope for the best and make our best efforts to get the sermon across to you. If the audio or if the sermon needs to be concluded abruptly, then I will either inform you, or of course if the stream terminates, then you will know that the worst has happened. Okay, so let's begin then. And as usual, before we begin, let us all take a moment to remind ourselves that we are so extremely fortunate to be in receipt of the Buddha's teaching. The great master, the great teacher, he who is the awakened one, the perfect one, the omniscient one, the magnificent one, the undefeated one, the infinitely virtuous one, he who is the teacher who taught all beings to redeem themselves from samsara and the path towards that. So before we commence today's sermon, let us all take a moment to pledge our allegiance to the Lord Buddha. And by doing so, this is simply, or rather this is more than anything else, an oath that we take upon ourselves to follow the path that he taught us, and that is for no other reason other than our deliverance, our salvation, and achieving the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. So in order to do that, may I ask you all to be upstanding, so we can recite the Dhirasya Vigata Mohasa stanza, followed by which we will observe the precepts and then commence the sermon. Dhirasya Vigata Mohasa Abhinna Khilasya Vijita Vijayasya Anighasya Susamachittasya Buddhasilasya Sadhupanyasya Vesantarasya Vimalasya Bhagavato tasya Savakohamasmi. Dhirasya Vigata Mohasya Abhinna Khilasya Vijita Vijayasya Anighasya Susamachittasya Buddhasilasya Sadhupanyasya Vesantarasya Vimalasya Bhagavato tassa savakohamasmi dhirassa vigata mohassa pabhinna khilassa vijita vijayassa anighassa susamachitassa buddha silassa sadhu panyassa vesantarassa vimalassa bhagavato tassa savakohamasmi namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Please repeat all together and after me. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Saranagamaṇaṃ sampunnaṃ, Pānātipātā vēramaṇī sikkhapaдаṃ samādhiyāmi, Adinādāna vēramaṇī sikkhapaдаṃ samādhiyāmi, Kāmesu micchāchārā vēramaṇī sikkhapaдаṃ samādhiyāmi, Musāvādā vēramaṇī sikkhapadaṃ samādhiyāmi, Surāmēraya majjapamā daṭṭhānā vēramaṇī sikkhapadaṃ samādhiyāmi, Tisaranena saddhiṃ pañcasīlaṃ dhammaṃ sādhukaṃ surakkitaṃ kattvā appamādena sampādēt. You may all now be seated. And as usual then, before we commence today's sermon, let us all take a moment to reflect on this precious gift that is the Dhamma that we have received today. And let us also remind ourselves that we are eternally obliged and duty-bound to all those who have helped and supported and assisted us throughout this long journey in samsara. Those who helped us to better ourselves, to become who we are today, to grow and prosper in value and virtue. Therefore it is our duty to return the favor that they offered to us. Let us all therefore take this opportunity to do so. Let us repay the debts that we owe them. And in order to do so, let us take a moment to invite all those beings, wherever they may be in this infinitely vast universe, in the 10,000 world systems. There will be devas, brahmas, spirits, demons, and those who have predeceased us among them. Among them will be those who have today been born in woeful plains, and they are in search of merit so that they can free themselves once again. Let us offer them this opportunity. And for all beings who are already in the blissful plane, let us extend to them an opportunity to listen to the teaching of the Buddha, to understand the Four Noble Truths, and to attain the Noble Attainments. So as I now make this invitation out to all of them, I ask you all to extend that invitation in your hearts and in your minds with compassion towards all those sentient beings, reminding yourself of all the ways in which they may have helped you, supported you, and assisted you. With gratitude within your hearts, extend that invitation out to all of them. May they join us wherever they may be, in whatever capacity they are able to do so. And for any of them who are today born in woeful plains, may they acquire merit from this meritorious deed that is about to unfold. May such merits help them to redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. And may for all sentient beings in the blissful plane, may they receive this opportunity to listen to the teaching of the Buddha, understand it, comprehend it, and may they all achieve the noble states and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gacchantu Devata Saddhammang Munirajassa Sunantu Sagga Mokkadang Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayang Bhadanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayang Bhadanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayang Bhadanta. And also before we commence, let us all take a moment to seek forgiveness from the Noble Ones as well as the Noble Triple Gem for any thoughts, words or actions of revile and desecration, slander or insult that we might have directed towards them. As the consequences of such actions may be that today our progress in the Dhamma is hindered, and every opportunity we receive to practice the Dhamma, various factors block such opportunities and keep us away from achieving the noble bliss, the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. So therefore, let us all reflect on the fact that although today our lives have changed because of the Dhamma, and we have become good and great people, or in the process of becoming so, in this infinitely long journey in samsara, when we have not had the association of noble and moral associations, our minds will have been defiled with raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion and delusion, and having succumbed to ignorance and attachment, countless times we will have offended the Noble Triple Gem, as well as the Noble Ones, the Samma Sambuddhas, Pacceka Buddhas, Arahata Buddhas, Anagamis, Sakrudagamis, Sotapannas, be they on the path of having attained the fruits, as well as the Buddha's ministry, the Sambuddha Shasana. May all the Noble Ones forgive me for any thoughts, words or actions of revile, desecration, slander or insult that I might have directed towards them, either knowingly or unknowingly. So let us all take a moment to seek forgiveness. And finally, let us all make a firm resolve. May all the merits that we will have conducted throughout this long journey in samsara, in making offerings to the Buddha, Dhamma or Sangha, in helping others, in doing good to all those around us, and merits we have acquired in engaging in numerous meritorious deeds, come to our rescue. May those merits help me to remain vigilant, help me to remain attentive, keep my focus, listen to the teaching, understand it, comprehend it, and may through the course of this very sermon I be able to achieve the noble state of Sotapanna, and therefore to embark on the path to my liberation. For any of you who may have already achieved that noble state, may through the course of this sermon you be able to fulfill the subsequent stages, and may this sermon help us all to achieve the noble bliss of Nibbana, the supreme bliss of Nibbana. With that firm resolve in your minds, I invite you all, prepare yourselves to listen to this sermon. Okay. The more you begin to understand the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddhas, past, present, or future, the more you will begin to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that Buddhas come into this world to teach us that we are all suffering unnecessarily. It is to show us the errors in our ways. It is to give us a wake-up call. It is to invite us to open our eyes and to observe. We are used to opening our eyes to observe the things that are happening around us. But seldom have we opened our eyes to observe what's happening within us. This is the call of the Buddhas. This is what they invite us to do. To open our eyes and look within. Because once we have understood what's going on within, what's happening within, the need to look outwards will end there in itself. Not knowing that there's a fire ablaze on the inside, but nevertheless experiencing the burns from the scorching fire, we have always looked for answers from the outside. We have been looking for firefighters, those who may be able to come and help put out the fires that are ablaze within us. That is what we have been so accustomed to doing. We have not known any better. This is the error in our ways. It's a never-ending journey, it's a never-ending story, when the end has not been witnessed. When the doctrine of cause and effect is not evident to one, they will forever keep looking outwards, looking out through the window, hoping the firefighters will turn up any moment. And as you keep looking out, the fire is building up. It's burning everything it touches. Enrage, with desire, aversion and delusion, these three fires keep burning one keep burning us from the inside. But we have never stopped to look within. We have never stopped to realize the principles of cause and effect. How for as long as the causes are present, only then will the result, that is the fires that keep burning, will be able to bother us, to scorch us. Without understanding this concept, this reality, we have forever looked out the window and asked for firefighters to come and put out our fires. The firefighters are very busy because what they do is they keep running around, putting out each other's fires. But the problem is the firefighters are burning themselves. They themselves are ablaze. So everyone you see outside your window, you may consider them to be firefighters, but unfortunately, it's a case of the blind leading the blind. Those who are ablaze are trying to help put out the fires of others. It's quite ironical that. But we have not known any better, we have not known any different. Things we used to do, things I used to do, if I may say so, when I was younger, when I was a lot more naive than I am today. The things I used to say, you will be able to relate to most of these. The things I used to say to people, do not worry, I'll help you, I'll keep you happy. This is coming from a firefighter who's ablaze on the inside themselves. How can one give something to someone else when they don't have it themselves? That is the irony. It's quite simple, but yet it's quite ironical. It's so simple, we keep missing it. That's the irony. It's so simple, like the simplest of things, which we keep missing. Sometimes the big things we are able to see because they stand right in front of our faces, but the little things we seem to miss because we just have not perfected the art of looking for the little things. Big, big, big. Thinking big. That's all we've known to do. We've never stopped to look at the little things, the tiny details, the intricacies. But if we had, doesn't make sense to say if we had we would have seen, because it doesn't work like that. You do need someone to come and remind you. Stop looking at the big things, start looking at the simple things. Just take a moment to think about how complicated people have made their lives and their surroundings and their environment. How complicated and complex people's families are, their workplace, their jobs, the things they do to keep them happy, so complex and so complicated. Always thinking big. Wanting more, wanting to do more. From a worldly perspective, this all seems very logical and the thing to do. But what I'm hopefully trying to get across to you is from a supramundane perspective, from the perspective of identifying the true suffering, which can only be seen and not felt. How does one begin to look internally, introspectively, and find the cause? When do we stop looking for firefighters to come out and put out our fires? Because the moment you realize what are the causes of the fire, all you need to do is to go and switch off the gas. That's it. Simple. But when you don't know what are the causes that bring a fire into existence, then throughout that period you will continue to suffer. So the Buddhas coming into this world, their purpose is to first identify for themselves what is the fire that is burning within them. This is the time during which they are the bodhisattvas, those who are in seek of how to put out fires. The right way. Not the way everyone says, but the right way. Because they try everything, but everything fails, and then they realize no one has really discovered the way to do this, so I had better go and find it out for myself. And then they embark on this journey, a journey that no one has ever been on before, except for those who are just like him. But a long, long, long time ago, so there's no one to call upon, there's no one to seek advice from, there's no one to get direction from or guidance from. It's a journey that he has to walk alone. No one to show the path, no one to clear it out, no one to ask questions and get answers. It's a path of self-discovery. So once they have found that out for themselves, then they spend the rest of their lives trying to teach the path to putting out fires to everybody. But unfortunately, as much as their wish and their determination and their resolve is to discover the path for themselves and to teach it to every living being there is, every walking man and beast there is on this planet, and all the other world systems, despite their greatest and best intentions, a tiny fraction compared to those who they leave behind, negligible. A negligible amount, a tiny fraction, like a speck of dust in this universe. That's all. That is all. That is all. That really understand what it is that he tries to teach. They stop looking out the window, and then they realize that the fire is behind them, not in front of them. Trying to look for answers outside is meaningless, when really there's no one out there who's already put out their own fires. So they find the path to do that, and then they walk carefully, diligently, with guidance from a teacher, taking advice every step, not being hasty, but being heedful at the same time. And then they, through their practice and over time, put out the fires once and for all. And then they're gone. Some of them stay behind to tell how it is they achieved it, but the time that they spend around is very little. They spend a very short time. During that time, there are others who are fortunate enough to go and seek that advice and instruction, and then they follow the same path. But when their time is gone, like a lamp which was once so bright and lit the entire room, but after the oil runs out, or when the wick is burnt out, as the lamp fades out and burns out, and along with it all of the light that once shone so bright is gone with it. Now, again, it's total pitch black darkness. The fires are ablaze again, with no teacher, with no one to teach, with no one to show how to put it out. And then this journey continues for eons at a stretch. And all this time people work so hard, which is the other irony. They work so hard to find a way to put out this fire. But unfortunately, there's only one way to do that, and that way has to be taught by one who has discovered it by himself. I think you can all relate to this. So is it not funny when someone walks up to somebody else and says, "Come with me, and I will keep you happy forever. If you come with me, I will make sure that you will never cry. If you come with me, you shall never weep. You will never be in sorrow or grief. I will look after you. I will take care of you. I will make sure that the tears that drop out of your eyes are only tears of joy and never tears of sorrow." What a joke. If you ever hear these words from someone, silently ask yourself, silently, don't say it out loud, because they're not going to understand it. Because if they understood it, they wouldn't have said what they just said. So silently tell yourself how sorry you feel for this person. Sympathize with them. Feel sorry for them. If you understand what it is I'm trying to explain to you here, folks, when they come to you and say, "Come with me and I'll put out your sorrow," really what you will be feeling, what will come to your mind is, actually you're the one who needs me to put you out of your sorrows. That is, if you understand what I'm talking to you here, or what I'm talking about. Because one who walks up to someone else and says, "Come to me and I will put out your sorrow. Come with me and I will put out your grief. Come with me and I'll make sure that you never cry again." For someone to come and be saying that to you, either they have put out the fires for themselves, in which case they have come across someone who, following the journey of self-discovery, have found the way, and therefore this is a convert. But if not, if they are coming up to you in the hope that you will join them and be with them, and in return they are returning a favor, which is they will do their best to keep you from crying, to keep you from weeping, and to keep you from lamenting, then really what you should be thinking for yourself is, "Dude, you're not the one who can help me. I'm the one who can help you." That's the irony. Those of you who joined last week's sermon will remember I shared with you a story. True story. And having related the story to you, I emphasized a very important point towards the end of that. See if you can remember it. I explained to you why it is I related that story to you. I told you it was not a story for the sake of a story. It was one of those things like an Aesop's parable. A story that has a purpose. So the purpose I explained to you at the end of it, and the purpose behind that was to show you the ugly face of ignorance and attachment. What ignorance and attachment can do to people. In that story, you will remember there was a couple, and then there was the friend of the man who went on to get married. And in the story, you remember how on the day before the wedding, The friend of this man, who was a woman, approached him and shared with him a love and affection that she had felt for him for a long period of time, ignoring the fact completely that he's about to get married to somebody else the following morning. And as much as it might sound as a fairy tale, as much as it might sound to some like what a beautiful way to express your love and affection towards someone, I'm sorry to have burst your bubble last week. I lifted the covers and I showed you the ugly beast that lived within. Any of you who might have felt what a wicked woman she was, unfortunately, you're mistaken. For any of you to have felt anger or a grudge towards the woman or the man, either of them or both of them, unfortunately you didn't take away the lesson that I wanted to share with you. You missed the point. So for you it was just a story. You missed the point. The point of the story was, look at what ignorance and attachment can do to people. If you were to freeze that moment where she walks up to this man and says, can I say something to you? I've always been wanting to say this to you. I know it's a big day in your life tomorrow. Well, guess what? It's a big day in my life tomorrow for me as well. Can I say something to you? Right? If we just freeze that moment in time, and then we went into the mind of this woman, and somehow we were able to extract ignorance and attachment. Once you extract ignorance, attachment comes out with it. They're like joint twins. They go everywhere together. They live together, they walk together, they do things together. You can't have one without the other. So if you pull ignorance out, then attachment comes out with it. So if you were able to do that, imagine the woman has already said, excuse me, I want to say something to you, and now we have freezed that moment in time. We've gone into the heart or the mind of this woman and taken out and extracted ignorance, and along with that attachment. Now we come back out of this woman's mind, and now again we hit the play button. What might her next words be? What do you think? In the previous scenario, she was going to say, or she had said, excuse me, I want to say something to you. I've always been meaning to say this. Here's how I feel about you. And then she went on to express her deepest feelings and emotions towards this person. In this new scenario, she'd probably say something like this. Excuse me, I want to say something to you. It's something I've always wanted to say to you. Now, I'm not going to say the rest of it. You can fill it up. You should be able to. What might she say? She'd probably say something like, are you sure you want to do this? Not because you'd better do this with me, but rather, what do you think you're doing? Are you sure this is what's best for you? Are you sure this is what's best for the person you're going to get together with? But only in a way that brings meaning into their life. not in a destructive manner, not in a selfish manner, but in a selfless, meaning well manner. So you see, if we are able to extract ignorance and attachment out of this person's mind, and now the words that she says, or at least the meaning that is conveyed with the words that she says, they're totally different. Totally. The intentions are entirely different, worlds apart. So that must tell us something. That must tell you something. That the words spoken previously were not hers. Because if it were hers, then she would speak the same words. But it's not. So the words were not hers. We have just extracted ignorance. Okay, rewind the tape. Pause again. Let's go back and replace ignorance and attachment exactly where we took it out of. Let's put it back. And then let's come back out again. And now again hit the play button. Now again she says, I've always felt this way about you. There's a deep love and affection that I feel towards you. And what you're going to be doing tomorrow is going to kill me. That's probably what she said. But again, stop, rewind the tape, pause, let's go back in again. After all, this is the scientific method. Take back out the ignorance and along with that attachment. Now come back out and hit the play button again. And now see what she's going to say. So you see, you can repeat this in your mind. You can replay this tape time and time again in your mind. And that must prove something to you, that it's not the person that is ever wrong. It's ignorance and attachment. What I'm trying to help you see here, folks, is how a doctor diagnoses his patients. A doctor doesn't have a grudge with his patients. If he did, that's not a doctor. Then that's the patient. The doctor diagnoses the patient to identify what it is that is causing pain, grief, and agony to the patient. The diagnosis is not the patient. The diagnosis is what is causing the pain to the patient, and not the patient. Are you seeing the difference here? It may be subtle, but it's important. It's a very important distinction. If you can understand this concept, then the way you handle problems, practical problems in lives, will begin to change remarkably. You will begin to wonder how you ever solved problems in the past. You'll start kicking yourself in the back for the way that you solved problems in the past, by personifying problems, by thinking that the problem was in people, persons, and their personalities. I want to make you capable. This is my aim. I want to make you capable of identifying that the problem here is with ignorance and attachment. It's not the person. It's never the person. It never was the person. For those of you who have been following the previous sermons will realize the person didn't exist in the first place. But let's not go that far for now. The problem is always with ignorance and attachment. That's a skill that you need to develop, and it's a skill that will come with understanding. The more you comprehend what it is that I'm trying to explain to you here, I tell you, in the face of problems, you will be unshakable. You will be incapable, I repeat, you will be incapable of holding grudges against people. Not that you won't do it, you're just not capable of it. You won't know how to do it. Not that you don't want to, you just don't know how. You won't be able to, you're not capable of it. If you can just Try and understand what I'm trying to explain to you here. Go back into the situation, the scenario. The woman's about to approach the boy, this man, and make this unduly proposal, knowing fully well that the wedding is scheduled for the following day, knowing fully well that when the moment she utters these words, his life is going to be a living hell. That in the event that he's able to reciprocate this feeling towards her, if he feels the same way about her, then she knows fully well that his life is going to be a living hell from this day forward. And if he but decides to go with what his heart says and forget intelligence, leave out wisdom, and just go with what his heart says, she knows fully well that if he decides to come with me, then dozens of other people are going to be impacted by this. They'll be left heartbroken. Metaphorically, and might be even literally. Heartbroken. Possible? Very possible. Just imagine if it was your wedding day. Imagine that. Those of you who have been married or who are married or who are about to get married, the day before your wedding, your husband or the husband-to-be comes to you and say, yeah, we're going to have to call it off. Followed by that age-old saying, which everyone hates, it's not you, it's me. Just imagine that scenario. If you were stood up at that point, you hear this, aren't your knees going to start to tremble? Wouldn't you feel like someone just hit you with something on the back of your head? You'd almost go blind. You wouldn't know how to feel at that moment, whether it's anger, disappointment, frustration, suicidal. You wouldn't know how to feel at that point. And then one by one, all the other repercussions of this unexpected event will start coming into your mind. My parents, what am I going to tell them? My friends, what am I going to tell them? All the money that I have had to put towards it, all my assets I had to sell to get the money to spend towards it, all the loans that I took out, the time I took off from work, all the time and effort I spent towards it. What am I going to do now? All of these will start coming into your mind one by one, and that's after you have regained your consciousness, following the faint that you had immediately after you were told this. See, you can't tell me that the woman didn't know any of this might happen. So, evil woman, bad woman, terrible woman, wicked woman? No, you're mistaken. Stop the tape, rewind, pause, go back in, extract ignorance. Attachment comes along with that. Now replay the tape. And she won't say anything along those lines. If anything, worst of what she would be saying is, I wish you both the very best. I wish you a happy wedded life. That's the worst thing that's going to come out of her mouth. So then, tell me, having conducted this test, who's to blame here? Who do we point our finger towards? Remember in our old sermons, or in the previous sermons that we did, I taught you to point your finger back towards you. Whenever there's something wrong, you don't like something, remember our previous sermons where I said if you don't like the way someone does something, you can walk up to them and say, hey, I don't like the way you do this, so therefore I'm going to change. If you have listened to the previous sermons, you will be reminded of this. What I'm asking you to do now is take one step further. See, don't worry, I'm holding your hand, one step at a time. I didn't tell you all of this back then. You weren't ready for it. Bad people don't become great people all of a sudden. First they become good people. Those who have been pointing their finger outwards, finger pointing to everyone else, finding faults with everyone else, first have to learn to point that finger towards themselves. That's the first step on this journey. And subsequently they learn that it's actually not themselves they need to be pointing the finger towards, but the ignorance and attachment that lay within themselves. So now the focus is improved. It's more precise. Now the culprit is becoming more identifiable. It's not a generalistic me. It's a very specific ignorance and attachment. I want you to be able to spot ignorance and attachment a mile away. Whenever you smell foul, I want you to be able to attribute it to ignorance and attachment. It's a skill that you can develop, but based in understanding of this. There's no point just walking around saying, oh yes, all ignorance and attachment, ignorance and attachment, ignorance and attachment. Be careful, you might go and bang your head on something. That's not what I'm asking you to do. First we need to understand why it is that ignorance and attachment are to blame and not the person. The next step on this journey will be, I will show you that there was never a person to be blamed. But one step at a time. Let's learn to walk first before we learn to run. And then I'll teach you how to fly. One day. So ignorance and attachment are to blame here. Not the person, not the individual. This is something you're going to have to practice though. It comes with time. Whenever you smell foul, as I say, whenever you spot funny business, whenever you see something happening which you know shouldn't be happening, whenever you see the engagement in unmeritorious deeds, note I didn't say someone engaging in unmeritorious deeds. Whenever you spot the engagement in the unmeritorious deeds, I'm asking you, I want you to be able to spot the culprit as being ignorance and attachment. Whose ignorance and attachment? No, let's not go there. It's ignorance and attachment. If that ignorance and attachment were inside your mind, can you vouch to me that you would not do the same? You all know the story of the Buddha who was on a journey one day, and Devadatta, who pushed a rock from above a mountain hoping to kill the Buddha, or at least to hurt him. So when you learned this story, when you first heard of this story, we were all like that. We began to think of evil Devadatta, the wicked Devadatta, the vile Devadatta. That's how we learn to think. But now I need you to begin to understand that your thinking that way is flawed. Because if you begin to think evil, vile, wicked Devadatta, then there's a tiny little Devadatta in you also. Because Devadatta is not to blame. Ignorance and attachment are to blame. Wherever there is ignorance, attachment lives. It's like a symbiotic relationship. One exists because of the other, and the other feeds the other. So for as long as ignorance exists, there shall be attachment, and for as long as there is attachment, attachment will reinforce ignorance. Until this cycle is broken. This is an endless loop. So this is what needs to be identified as the wrongdoer. These are attributes of the mind. But that's who's to blame. Not the mind, not the owner of the mind, if you are to speak in those terms for the time being. Any situation in your life, just go back in time and think about the last time that, within inverted commas, someone hurt your feelings. The last time someone hurt your feelings. Someone said something, either deliberately or by accident, said something and it hurt your feelings. If it was deliberate, let's assume it was deliberate. It's easy for us to point the finger outwards. So this is what we used to do. Then I taught you, let's stop pointing the finger outwards and let's point the finger inwards. Right? I don't like the way you speak, therefore I'm going to change myself. That was our first step. But now what I'm going to ask you to do is to spot ignorance and attachment as being the causes that led to such an utterance being made. Can you do that? It's not going to be easy, but it's what has to be done. It's not easy, but it's what has to be done. It's what has to be done. You got to do what has to be done, not what's easy to do. So think back. I'm giving you time here. Think back at the last time someone said something that hurt your feelings. Someone said something and you thought, ouch, I really didn't expect that. How could he or she have said something like that to me? What do they think about me? How could they think about me like that? How evil. How rude. If you can't recall a personal experience, think about something you witnessed between two other people. There's enough material on the news. So you can't be short of experiences into which you can apply this. So when you experience that, let's go back in time into that situation, right? So I'll take the simple example of someone said something to me that really hurt my feelings. Let's assume that it was a deliberate utterance. They said it with the intention of hurting you. Let's assume that. I'm not saying everyone in this world is innocent. Right? That's not what I'm saying. Let's assume that the intention was to hurt you, and that is why the utterance was made. Okay, fine. Let's rewind the tape to that point in time. Now let's pause the tape. Now let's go into that person's mind, the person who made the utterance, the person who said the harsh words. Why do I say harsh words? Because we are assuming that it was an intentional utterance. Now let's go into that person's mind. Let's go deep into their mind and let's find ignorance and attachment. How do you know it's there? Oh, it's there, all right. If what they said was intentional, it was deliberate to hurt you, well, you know sure as hell that ignorance and attachment are somewhere in there. We just need to go and find it. That's what I said. You can smell it. You can smell it a mile away. So now we go in and we dig, and we find ignorance, we find attachment, and now we extract them. We pull it out, put it into a bag, tie it up, put it on our backs, and then carry it out. Bin bags are good for this. So now we come out of the person's mind, and then we turn around, and now again we hit the play button. So now they're about to say something. That's where we pause the tape, and we hit the play button. The next words will be nothing like the previous ones. Either the words are different, or even if the words are the same, the intention is different. The intention to hurt you, the intention to harm you, the intention to cause you grief and pain and agony cannot exist. Not may not exist, it simply cannot exist. Cannot. There's not the slightest chance that it can exist in there. So now let's rewind the tape again. Let's take ignorance and attachment, go back into the mind and reinstall it wherever we found it from, come back out and hit the play button again. Oh, and they're saying it exactly as they said before, with a frown, intentional, and meaning to cause anger, cause pain. Go back, rewind the tape, pause, take out ignorance and attachment again. Now hit the play button. And, oh, it's not like what they said before. So then tell me again. Are there evil people in this world? Are there wicked people in this world? Are there bad people in this world? Are there vile people in this world? Hopefully you're beginning to find the answer. Hopefully you're beginning to discover that ignorance and attachment is a common enemy. Because it matters not where ignorance and attachment reign, wherever it is, it will cause havoc and collateral damage along with it. Now you see, that ignorance and attachment, we put it in a bag and sealed it because just in case it gets escaped and jump into our minds, now the next words that come out of your mouth would be exactly what that person said a moment ago, or would have said a moment ago, had you left ignorance and attachment with them. So you see, again, this is like a virus. As I said, learn to be a doctor. Don't be the patient, learn to be the doctor. The doctor diagnoses the patient, and he comes up with the diagnosis. The diagnosis will say, this patient suffers from XYZ. You're never going to find a diagnosis report on which the doctor has written, diagnosis, patient. So the patient is not the problem. What it is that is causing him to become a patient is the problem. I urge you to think deep and hard about what I'm trying to explain to you here. As I said, if you understand what I'm trying to show you here, you will be incapable of holding grudges against people. Not you won't feel like it. Not I only do it on Wednesdays and Fridays, but never on a Monday, Tuesday and a Thursday. No, you just won't be capable of it, even if you tried. Because the causes for it will not be with you. Cause and effect all over again. That's all there is after all. Think back to your school days. Lots of examples, lots of experiences. Long period of life, or long period of time, of our lives we spent in school. 13 long years, most of us. Unless you got kicked out. So in that period of time, you can think back to a lot of the events that happened during your school days. Times you got hit, times you hit, times you got shouted at, times you shouted at, times things got stolen from you. You can fill in the rest. Causing grief and being subject to grief. See, in each of these events, and you'll have a gamut of experiences into which you can go and dip into and pick up experiences. And I want you to do this as you listen to the sermon right now. I need this to be practical for you. See, go back to those experiences. If you can't remember back to your school days, think about after you got married, living together with your spouse. Times, those odd times when words were misspoken. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, anger, frustration and annoyance got the better of either yourself or the other person. And how things were said, things were done. Some things were unsaid, which should have been said. Some things were left undone, which should have been done. It works both ways, right? On each of these occasions, see if you can go and find out the real culprit. Once you find out the real culprit, just think about it. Why does a doctor use gloves when he examines a patient? No, not because they're cheap. It's because he wants to prevent cross-contamination. He does not want to be infected by whatever it is that's got the patient. Whatever it is that has made the patient, he does not want to make him the patient. That is why he wears gloves. That is why he might wear a mask, a face mask. There is, of course, you don't want to get things that come out of your mouth into the patient's open wound, but I'm not talking about that. It could be the other way around, covering your nose to stop the bug getting into your respiratory system and so on. You know the drill, is everywhere today. So think about this. So this is, as I say, try and be the doctor here. As the doctor would diagnose a patient, I'm asking you to diagnose life situations. Because life is all about the way you interact with others and yourself. Yourself, of course. Some of the things you do by yourself. Some of the things you do when there's no one else around. Some of the things that you would never say that you do, or you'd never confess to having done. Go back to some of those moments in your life. Easy thing, Swami Nwanza, happened just before the sermon. Matters not, just go back into that situation. Pause the tape. First rewind, then pause the tape. Now go in. Get into the mind. What are we looking for? Precious? No, we're looking for ignorance and attachment. We're looking for ignorance and attachment. How do we know it's there? Oh, sure as hell it's there. How do we know? You wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. had it not been for ignorance and attachment. How do we know? Well, let's take it out for a moment and see what happens. Having found ignorance, let's pull it out. Let's pull it out. Put it in that bag, tie it up, let's carry it out, and now play the tape. What might you do the next moment? I think you'll agree, whatever it is you were doing, what you're going to be doing next is going to be very different. If the action is the same, I can guarantee the intention will be entirely different. Either one or both of these things will be very different. So you see then, some people suffer a lot with guilt. I'm giving you treatment for that. Some people suffer a lot through anger, malice and hatred and grudges with others. I'm trying to treat you. I'm trying to show you how you can treat yourself rather than me treat you, teaching you how you can treat yourself. I want you to become the doctor. It's time to diagnose. See if you can build this capability. We will recall on this in a future sermon as we approach the meditation session, either following week or the week after. Can't remember off the top of my head. But in our next meditation session, I will ask you to do this. So let's get some practice for that. Because what I don't want to happen is you going in your mental journey, or your mental spaceship if you like, going back in time, your time capsule, going back into the time or the point in time in which you were with another person and they said something that really hurt your feeling. I don't want that just to be another, I don't want you fuming and losing your mind as you reflect on this. So it's through practice you will begin to understand that this is not the time to get emotional, this is the time to diagnose. Again, as I say, just be like a doctor. When a mother carries a child in her arms, the child's suffering from a griping stomachache, and the mother's crying because she feels badly about the child. She feels really sad and sorry about the child, and she comes to the doctor looking for some treatment. Have you seen the doctor cry? No, because this is not about getting emotional. Because if you did get emotional, now you got another patient. This is about diagnosing the disease. And the most important point to take away from this is the diagnosis is not the patient. It was never the other person, and it was never you either. That's why I'm saying guilt is an unnecessary burden. It does not do anything. It does not help in any way. I agree, there will be lots of things you have done in your life. Today you will look back retrospectively and you'll feel so terrible about yourself. How could I do those things? How could I have done those things? What was I thinking? How could I have said something like that to that person? How much she cared about me. How much he looked after me. And did everything in his or her power to keep me happy, and yet look what I did to her. Look what I did to him. There will be times in your life where you will feel so much guilt. There are some people who become suicidal as a result of which. They become suicidal. Guilt is such a strong emotion. It's a very fierce emotion. Guilt cannot be felt by an arahant. They are incapable of guilt. Not they don't think like it, they're just incapable of it. That's what I'm trying to teach you here. How do you become incapable of guilt? How does one become incapable of anger? How does one become incapable of desire? Not how does one not be desiring or desirous. How does one become incapable of desire? How does one become incapable of malice, ill will, anger, hatred, frustration, disappointment, all these negative emotions? How do you become incapable of them? You understand the word incapable? It's not a case of you can but you won't. It's a case of you can't, even if you tried. Without using any mechanical means, if I asked you to fly, what would you say? Swami Nohansa, I'm incapable of flying. I mean in that sense. If you had wings and you didn't fly, that's not because you can't fly. You can fly but you don't. I don't mean in that sense. I mean in the sense of, I ask you to fly, you don't have wings. Now you're going to have to say, I can't fly, not I don't want to fly, or I don't feel like flying, or not now, maybe tomorrow. You're not going to say any of these things. You're simply going to say, I'm incapable of flying. I mean in that sense. Would you not like to be incapable of anger? Come on. Would you not like to be incapable of hatred? Would you not like to be incapable of disappointments and frustrations and annoyances and broken hearts? Would you not like to be incapable of feeling suicidal? Would you not like to be incapable of crying through grief? Would you not like to be incapable of fear? See, this is not about learning to control yourself. As modern mental health might try to propose. This is the Buddha's way. The Buddha was incapable of fear. So you see, that's one thing that we can do that he can't. The Buddha was incapable of desire. He was incapable of being deluded. He couldn't do it even if he tried. As much as a Sotapanna is incapable of going into the four hells. Incapable is the new capable. To do that, we need to be able to find out what is making me capable of anger. If you want to become incapable of anger, what you need to do is find out what's making me capable of anger. See, that's the diagnosis. Once you have identified what is making you capable of getting angry, or what is making you capable of anger, and you have now taken away that which makes you capable of anger, now you are no longer capable of anger. Therefore, you are incapable of anger. That's it. Harry is still Harry. Harry was first capable of anger. Now he's incapable of anger. Harry is still Harry. What's changed is once he was capable, he's now no longer capable. He's incapable of anger. Now Harry is free. I want you all to be able to build that capability within yourselves. That's why I say, build that capability where you're able to go into your life situations and find out what it is that debilitated you. What it is that caused you all this grief, agony and pain and frustrations and annoyances and disappointments, and really made you pull your hair out and kept you awake at night. Then no one's going to be able to hurt you. I'm giving you time to think. I want this message to sink in. This is the practical stuff, folks. Nothing on a board. It's just you and I. I'm talking to you. I'm asking you to look inside of you. Look within. I'm asking you to do something. This is the practical stuff. Look within. See if you can find out. Go back to those previous situations in your life. You all spent time with others. You've spent time with yourself, if nothing else. The things you've done by yourself, the things you've done with others, the things you've done to others, the things you've done to yourself. Some of those things scarred you for life. Sometimes mentally, sometimes physically. Sometimes both. Some of the things you did scarred others. It left a scar. Sometimes mentally, sometimes physically, sometimes both. Sometimes they may not be able to be undone. But what I want you to do now is not to regret. I want you to become incapable of regret. This is what I mean. I'm trying to move you from good to great. A lot of bad people out there in the world. I mean in the conventional sense. Because now you should begin to understand that there is no such thing as a bad person. But at a very preliminary sense, level, bad people in this world, they don't regret. So to become great, first you have to go from becoming one who doesn't regret to one who regrets their actions. Then to move to great, you go from regretting to not regretting. It's a funny journey if you look at it, but that's the way it is. You go from 0 to 1 to 0. But in a very different sense. The 0 at the beginning and the 0 at the end are worlds apart. They are not one and the same. They are very different. One's called bad, the other's called great. I consider you all to be good people. You listen to the sermons regularly. You engage in lots of merit. I will talk to you about the significance and importance of merit. Hopefully if you have time left today towards the end of the sermon. why merit is so important, and how the Buddha himself praised merit. And these merits have helped you to slowly but gradually and certainly move one step at a time, one day at a time, a week or a month at a time, and now possibly several years for some of you at a time, to move away from bad to good. So first that was bad to good, and then now we move from good to great. So first we were breaking bad, and now we're breaking good. But do understand that the zero at either end are worlds apart. So I want you to become incapable of guilt. I know there are lots of people out there who live in tormentous amounts of guilt. It kills them from the inside. I know this because I talk to you people. When you come and meet with us and share your stories with us, like the man who came and spoke to one of our monks, terrible amounts of guilt, mortifying, kills them from the inside, drains the energy that keeps them going, and if left untreated, that becomes a festering wound, and one day it will kill the person from the inside. So there's no reason for guilt if you understand what it is I'm trying to explain to you here. But remember, this is not I don't feel guilt because he deserved it. You haven't broken bad yet. I'm not talking to you. You can go back and listen to the previous sermons, because you're still in nursery. I'm talking to those who have realized that causing any amount, even the tiniest bit of grief, pain or sorrow, inflicting any amount of ill will or anger on anyone else, on anybody for that matter, is the last thing that's on your mind. Every step you take, you're careful not to cause hurt to anybody. Every word you put out of your mouth, you're careful not to cause any harm or hurt to anybody. That's the kind of person I'm talking to. Those who have grown in virtue and wisdom. That is who I'm talking to today. Those who think to themselves, I want to watch out because I don't want to cause anyone any grief. Before you eat, you make sure everyone else has eaten. That's the kind of people I'm talking to. That's the kind of people, at least I hope I'm talking to. Those who will not sit until everyone else has sat. Those who will not sleep until everyone else has slept. That's the kind of people I'm talking to. Those who will not smile until everyone else is smiling. That's the kind of people I want to talk to, and I hope I'm talking to. Because you are capable of breaking good. You don't think bad of others. Duty and obligation is foremost to you. You think about others before you think about yourself. They before I, not I before them. That's the kind of people I'm talking to. Those who regard their parents as gods. Will nourish them, feed them, look after them, and do everything in their power to repay the duty that you owe them. Those are the kind of people I hope I'm talking to. Those who have given up their old ways. They don't take what does not belong to them. I hope I'm talking about you here. Only you know. I will say, see if it hurts you, or see if it makes you feel that you have achieved this. If you're feeling guilty as I say these things, not about your past, but about your present, then you're not ready to break good yet. You still need to break bad. Those of you who've given up bad habits, like taking what does not belong to you from the workplace or from anywhere else for that matter. Those of you who are very mindful about your presence and how it might affect others. Who is always first to excuse and who is first to seek forgiveness. Who is first to say please and first to say thank you. Those of you who invest your time for the benefit of others, that's who I'm hoping I'm talking to. I really hope so, because otherwise this lesson is not for you. Don't try to do this, you will break. Then you won't be able to break. Because first, we need to learn to walk before you learn to run. If you try to run before you start to walk, you won't have legs left to run. So, hopefully I'm talking to those of you who are human gods, gods in human form. I hope I'm talking to you. I hope this is who you are. Who respect their parents, who look after their families, who treat their husbands and wives with gratitude and regard them well, and are faithful to them, and take care of them, and do everything in their power to look after them and treat them well, who always teach good to their children, who do not expose their children to the evils of the world, who guard them and look after them and do your duty, who teach their children the virtues and the values. These are the things we have spoken about in the past. You remember. If you have listened to the sermons, you'll know. If you haven't listened to the sermons, well, you can stop now and you can go back and listen to one of the old sermons, because you won't understand what I'm about to say. Who wears a smile on their face, not because they're always happy, but because they understand that a smile is infectious, that it may cure a frown. A smile on your face can turn a frown upside down. I hope that's the kind of person you are, whose heart melts when they see others suffering, who can sense another person's hunger and another person's thirst, who can sense another person needs shelter, and who is willing to share whatever you have with others, always willing to give. First to give, last to take. I hope that's the kind of person you are. If that's the kind of person you are, then you are ready to break good. If that's not the kind of person you are, you first need to break bad. then we can start to work on breaking good. So for those of you who look within and see the errors in your ways from the ways of your past, the things you might have done in the past, you will sense some amount of guilt. You will be telling yourself, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that, look how much pain and grief I caused the other person. What I'm telling you is, you can begin to rest now. Because it was not you ever. It was not you all along. All along it was ignorance and attachment. Ignorance and attachment is what caused you to do it. Not you did it. Ignorance and attachment caused you to do it. See, the reason I am very adamant and I emphasize that you need to be someone who has broken bad first to understand this, is because otherwise what happens is you become too clever for your own good. That's when you become cunning, like a fox. That's not a good trait to have. So, for instance, if you've done something wrong and someone comes and asks you, why did you do that? If you're the kind of person that says, oh, well, I could have done something, ignorance and attachment. Not me. This is what happens. That's when you overstep the mark. That's when you are unable to digest what I'm trying to explain to you. So if you feel that way, then you're not ready for this. This is not for that kind of people. That's what I'm saying. This is a very careful journey that you need to tread on. I said this right at the start of this sermon. Very carefully, diligently, very watchfully, being in great amounts of vigilance. You need to watch, you need to be aware where you're going, you need to be aware where you're treading. This is why we need a teacher. So for someone who is ready to break good, they're not the kind of person who, when found to have done something wrong, will just say, it wasn't me, it was ignorance and attachment. Now you're not ready to accept, you're not responsible. You're not ready to accept responsibility. Well, you can't take the next step then. You first need to break bad. But for those of you who understand what I'm saying, then I'm telling you, you can rest. You can put down the burden on your shoulders. You can rest. Take a deep breath. And listen to what I'm saying here. It was never you all along. It was ignorance and attachment all along. How do we know? Rewind the tape. Go back to those situations in your life. Now pause the tape. Go into your mind. Go deep within. Take out ignorance, take out attachment. Bring them out. Now hit the play button again. Would you say the things you said? Would you do the things you said or you did? Would you have even thought the things you thought? I think you know the answer. Very different. Very, very different. So, that should tell you conclusively, it wasn't you at all, it was ignorance and attachment. So then, if anyone should be feeling guilty, it's not you. Ignorance and attachment should be feeling guilty. But hey, they don't feel guilty because that's the way they are. That's the way they are. I'm almost personifying ignorance here, but please understand that that's not another person. I'm almost personifying it just to help you imagine and visualize this. You're not the person to blame. Ignorance and attachment are to blame. But you can't write that down on your work disciplinary. When they call you in for a disciplinary, how come you stole this from the work? Is ignorance and attachment. You can't write that down there. You understand what I'm saying here, right? So these are attributes of the mind, but they are who are capable of making you capable of doing evil deeds. So it's almost like that's the software that's making you the hardware do evil deeds. If you write a bad word, type a bad word into a word processor and then hit the print button, and then you walk up to the printer and on the printer it comes out a printout and it's got a bad word on it, would you pick up the printer and smash it on the floor and say, bad, bad, bad printer? No, the printer has no choice there. It just prints whatever is sent to it from the computer. In the same way, ignorance and attachment is the software, or yes, you can think of it as the bug in the coding. That's the bug. So really, life is about debugging. Or at least the Buddha's Dhamma is about debugging your code. Debug the code. Get the bug out of the system. This is troubleshooting. When you see the trouble, shoot it. And then you cleanse the mind of ignorance and attachment. Once the mind is free of ignorance and attachment, now the mind is incapable. Put you into the picture, you are incapable of evil, you are incapable of anger, you are incapable of desire or sensuality, you are incapable of greed, you are incapable of malice and vice and any of these bad things. Any of these detrimental characteristics which cause harm and havoc and disaster to both oneself and the world around. So ignorance and attachment are the culprit. I want you all to take the time and go back into your life experiences and find out ignorance and attachment as being the culprits. Why are ignorance and attachment the culprit? Well, that you will have picked up from the previous sermons. Last week's sermon was also a good starter for those who might not have come across that before. We talked about how in the presence of ignorance there is always attachment, and in the presence of attachment there is wanting, and in the presence of wanting there's always going to be a vexation, and that vexation will have to be relieved, and relief from vexation has to happen through action, and that action can either be a meritorious deed or an unmeritorious deed, mainly. Meritorious deeds are deeds which help others move from whatever state they're in to a better state. Unmeritorious deeds are those which cause others to move from a state they're in to a state that is worse off. In simple terms. If you understand it along in those terms, I mean that's more than enough. As I said, Buddhism is not to analyze and to become professors in, but rather it's to apply into our practical lives. So engage in as much merits as you possibly can. It is so important. I talked to you last week about a transfer of merits before meals, and I put it up on screen, and I asked you all to take note of it and to start to use it before taking a meal. I trust that most, if not all of you, will have started doing that. And I said, today I will explain to you the significance of that. So for some of you who might have said, well, I'm not going to start until he says why. Well, good, fine, I'll tell you why today, but you have missed a week. That week you can't catch up now. That's why it's better to do as you are told to do, rather than asking 100 questions. It's fine to ask questions, but when you're asked to do something good, it's best to start doing it soon as possible. So let me put it back up on screen, and I will explain to you why I asked you to do this. Okay, so hopefully you can all see it on screen now. Let me first explain to you why I asked you to do this. And in order to explain this, I'm going to put forward to you a simple situation, a really simple scenario, and to get you to start thinking. You know sometimes how we hire people to do things for us? It could be anything. Say, you're catching a taxi, right? Simple as that. All of you will have used a taxi at some point in your life. So catching a taxi. Now, when you get a taxi, you get into the car and you ask the taxi driver to get you from point A to point B. And what the driver would do is he'd reset the meter, and then off he goes. You're in the car, and then at the end of the journey, he will stop the meter, work out how much you owe the taxi driver, and you will make your payment, and off you go. So in very simple terms, that's the end-to-end process. So some taxi drivers follow that to the letter. They will ask you to pop into the car. They'll ask you, where would you like to go, sir? And they'll take your instruction, and then off he goes. So he'll drive you to your destination. He'll work out the amount of money you owe him, and he says, and that's a total of X amount of money, dollars, pounds, whatever, rupees, and you make the bill. He says thank you, and off you go. Now that's the normal process, the happy path, if you like. Then you have some taxi drivers who go the extra mile. I don't mean if you need to get off at one place, he drives you another mile and says get off here. I mean goes the extra mile in a metaphorical sense. Pardon the pun. So some drivers will go the extra mile and may even try to cheer you up. You can't tell me you've never had that experience. You've not lived if you've never had a taxi driver try to cheer you up. You need to stop listening to the sermons. First go get into a taxi. Right, so there are some great taxi drivers out there. Three-wheel drivers, right? When I say taxis, I mean all sorts of taxis. Right? And they will do what they can to bring happiness into your life. Great people. Great people. So you're paying them to get you from A to B. But what about the words that they're saying to cheer you up? It might be that you've had a long day at work. It might be that you've just had some bad news. Loss in the family, or Perhaps you've been dumped, some bad news, some terrible news, and you're pulling a long face, or you're teary-eyed, or you've got your chin in your hands and you're looking out the window, staring into the openness, and the taxi driver's thinking to himself, gosh, this man seems to be having a really bad day today. Let's see if I can cheer him up. So then the taxi driver might start to try to have a conversation with you. You see, he'll try to have a conversation with you, not knowing how you might react. Beautiful human beings, aren't they? Your next words might be, can you just shut up? I just need to concentrate. Or just do your job. No, taxi drivers get abused a lot of the time, and they won't say anything. They just keep quiet and they'll go and they'll do their job. But for someone to feel that I want to do something on top, I want to go the extra mile, I want to do more than what he's asking me to do, that's a sign of greatness. So he might start to chat to you and say, sir, what's up? What's wrong? You seem like you've had a long day today. Is everything all right, sir? Anything's the trouble? Anything bothering you? Or he might even just say, oh, it's rainy weather today, isn't it? Just to get you into conversation, just to cheer you up, just to put a smile on your face. You've all had that experience, I'm sure. If you haven't, as I said, you need to get into a taxi. So we've all had that experience. Some of them have very little means. It may be that if you hadn't gotten into their taxi today, they're going to have to skip dinner. So to them, you getting into their taxi and paying them whatever amount of money that you're going to owe them at the end of the journey is enough for them to feed themselves, but they feel that they have a duty to you, to cheer you up. As I said, beautiful mind, beautiful hearts. You need to observe these things, folks. If you see these things within people, that's when you're beginning to, or you have already broken bad. You need to begin to spot these qualities within people. Greatness. Signs of greatness. They're infectious, I tell you. And then they'll start to talk to you. Sometimes they'll very slowly but gradually enter into bring you they'll try to build confidence. Sometimes they might even share an experience that they had, in the hope that what they're trying to share with you is worse than what you have in your mind that's bothering you. And when you listen to that story, you're going to wander scratching your head thinking, gosh, I thought I was having a bad day. See, they're sharing their most intimate details with you. Not because they just want to have a chinwag. It's because they want to cheer you up. They're going the extra mile. And they won't stop until they've turned the frown upside down. Sometimes they might even compliment. You're looking very smart today, sir. And that's all they need. That's all you need even, to turn that frown upside down. That's the only compliment you got all day. If you've never been there, get into a taxi, I tell you. There are some beautiful hearts out there. I wish this Dhamma reached them one day, someday, because we can help them go from good to great. Beautiful hearts. So then they won't stop. They're relentless. until they have weaned you off whatever it is that was hurting you, bothering you, annoying you, and cured that little tornado that was twisting and turning and causing you loads of grief inside your heart. We've all been there. Now tell me then, so they'll have this conversation all throughout the journey. Sometimes they might receive a phone call, and then, I've had that experience. I'm getting somewhere, taxi driver's having a conversation with me, they get a phone call. It might even be something that's important, but they won't take the call. They just continue talking to me because they're seeing that the words they say, they don't want to break my attention. They just want to keep me involved in that conversation at least until I feel better. How many people do you think might have gotten into a taxi thinking, I'm going to take this taxi, go and get to a bridge and jump off the bridge? How many taxi drivers do you think have saved people's lives? See, unsung heroes these people are. Unsung heroes. No one talks about them. Oh, but these things happen. How many three-wheel drivers do you think have saved people's lives? Perhaps they got into the taxi, they were fuming. They were on their way to someone who had wronged them, maybe with a weapon in their hand, saying, get me to that place as soon as you possibly can. I'm going to tear him a new page. I'm going to blow his brains out. Might have been some of the words that would have been said. But what did the three-wheel driver do? Mister, take it easy. I'll take you there, don't worry. Just take it easy. Come on, things happen to everybody. We all have problems. Let me tell you something happened to me lately. And then he will share with you an intimate story that happened to him. He's never said it with anybody, but he'll share it with you in the hope that you begin to realize that you're not the only one who's got problems in their lives. And then that has cured you now. At the end of that journey, you'll go, you know what, just take me back home. He'll take you back home, and then he'll say, it's on me. That trip was on me. Go home, be with your wife, have a good time, keep safe. There are so many beautiful hearts out there. My question to you is, how much do they charge you for that? Does the meter on the taxi go up with every word they say? With every word that comes out of their mouth to heal your festering wound that is your mind, the fire that is burning within, with every bucket of water they throw at you to put out that fire, does that put up the meter? It does nothing to the meter. Nothing. So really, at the end of the journey, when you ask what is the bill, all they're going to count or account for is the amount of miles that you have, that the wheels of the vehicle has turned, has traveled. It will only account for the time that you have spent together. But what he has done for you in the time that he has spent with you, that is priceless. Priceless. If he were to charge you for that, believe you me, you wouldn't be able to pay the bill. You'd go bankrupt. My question to you is then, how do you pay that debt? Do you have enough money for that? If you were to draw out all the money in all the accounts you have, is that enough money to pay all those debts? The debt that you owe him for saving your life, the debt that you owe him for saving you from getting into a fight, the debt that you owe him from saving you from getting into some brawl or some kind of altercation and causing harm and damage or just a broken heart, how are you going to pay that? This is what I'm saying. Materialism is not the answer to everything. Not everything in this world can be counted in rupees and cents. Not everything in this world can be accounted for in pennies and pounds or cents and dollars. You can't do that. Because the beauty that lives in people's hearts, that is priceless. A black card can't pay for that. That's priceless. So how do you repay the debt? How do you repay those debts? Is that not a debt? Good heavens, is there a bigger debt? How do you repay those debts? Now this is where you need a universal currency. A universal currency. A currency that is not bound by any demarcations that man has made or created. There are no boundaries to this. Has no limits or bounds. A currency whose potency just keeps on growing, whose power just keeps on growing. The more you give, the bigger it becomes, the bigger it gets. The more you give, the more powerful it becomes. That's the universal currency. It's not just human beings who need it. All sentient beings need it. That's the universal currency to pay debts which cannot be paid in any other means. And that is the universal currency of merit. Now do you see why we ask you to transfer merits at the end of the day? To all those who have helped us. You forgot the three-wheel driver, didn't you? If that was the three-wheel driver, what about your teachers? Where do we begin when it comes to parents? What about our spouses, husbands and wives, whose very existence is to keep us and our families in good shape? What about the postman? As I say, very little can you really account for with the money that's in your pocket. The smile on the postman's face, do you think he gets paid for that? When he hands over your post to you and he says, "Have a good day, sir." Do you think he gets paid for that? No, he doesn't get paid for that. But he's rendered that service to you. Now you're in debt. How do you pay that debt? Ta-da! Universal currency. That is why merit and the transfer of merit is so extremely important. Now apply the same scenario into the meals that come to your plate on a daily basis. Think about all those who have taken part, gotten involved in bringing that meal to you. One might think, well, I've got enough money to put 3 square meals on my plate every day and to feed my family for the next 10 years. Fair enough. Do you have all the money that is needed to build the lakes and the dams and the irrigation canals and all the processes that need to happen in between the reaping of the seed, or the planting of the seeds to the reaping of the crops? How much would you be willing to accept to go and do the job of a farmer who wakes up early in the morning, takes his cattle to the ground, to the paddy fields, and in the scorching sun plows the land, sows the seed, then looks after it, he waters it, and as he does it, sometimes he is chanting away Buddhaguna, Dhammaguna, Sanghaguna. He's blessing the land, not only because he needs an income that comes from it, but he's also mindful about all the people who the fruits of his hard labor are going to feed. And he wants to see you well, although you and he will never meet. He does not mind that, but he wants to go the extra mile. He wants to go the extra mile. What about the great kings who lived in the past, who thought not just about themselves but about the future generations? About the future generations to come, for many, many years to come, several hundred years to come, and thinking about them, the great kings who uttered, not a single drop of water that falls from the sky should go a waste without being put to human use. And then they built great lakes and rivers and dams so that a good healthy crop could be harvested. And all the people who worked under his instruction, the ministers and everybody else, how do you repay them? The food that's on your plate today, that's come a long way. Perhaps it is the harvest of the most recent harvesting. But the water that helped the crops to grow, that fed the crops, came flowing down the rivers and the canals that were built by those men and women who lived many thousands of years ago. And the lakes which held the water that fell from the skies, they were built by men and women, our ancestors, who lived long before us. Do you think your rupees and cents and pennies and pounds are going to be any good to them? How are you going to repay the debts? Universal currency. What's the exchange rate? It's 1 to infinity. You can't give any amount of rupees and get X amounts of universal currency. But you can give universal currency, and one day you may be able to reap them in terms of rupees and cents. That's possible. But that universal currency is not one that is acquired through physical activity as such. It's the power of the mind that generates it. It's mental power. It's your abhisankara, punya abhisankara. And so that is why I invite you to be grateful to all those who have done so much, so many millennia ago. You weren't even born, you when they were building those great lakes and dams and rivers. But they did it nevertheless, so that their hard work and labor may benefit many hundreds of thousands of people in the future, including you, including your spouses, including your friends and families. Today it's quite simple to cook a meal, serve it onto dishes and get it onto your plate, and everyone sit round, have a laugh and eat it. Within a matter of hours, you don't even know that the food was on the table. You can't even remember. But little do we stop to think how it got there. It's important to do that. It's so important to do that. Because that smile that's on the taxi driver's face, there is no other way to repay that. Repay for that. The hard work and labor that all our ancestors put in to feed us, to shelter us, the trees that they grew, in whose lee we take shelter, under whose leaves and branches today we take shelter, they're not here today for us to repay them. The only way we can repay them is through our universal currency. Today you are dressed comfortably. You're looking very smart today. But do you have enough money to pay for every bit in the process of the production line, from the cotton being planted to the dress you're wearing right now? No, you only had to pay a few dollars, a few pounds, a few rupees to get that item of clothing and to put it on yourself. But to make it, to put it all together, so many people, both man and beast, have gotten involved. Some sacrifice their life. Some sacrifice their life. How do you repay them? Money is not everything, folks. Don't let people fool you. Money is not everything. In the grand scheme of things, money is something that's just next to nothing. I wouldn't say it's nothing. It's next to nothing. Because in the grand scheme of things, what's really important is the beauty that lay in people's hearts. You can buy someone's labor. You can buy a man's time, but you can't buy his heart. That has to be won. That's why they say, winning one's heart. You can't buy one's heart. You can buy labor, but you can't buy dedication and commitment. You can't buy the desire with which they want to help you. You can't buy the way they feel about you. So how do you pay for that? Now you know the answer. Universal currency. This practice of transferring merits is one that was with our ancestors long ago. It's not new to us. Today this might look foreign, it might look something so unusual, but it's nothing new to us. Our ancestors did this. They always took the time to transfer merits before they took a meal. See, if you even look at it from a very technical point of view, you know that to receive a meal, you have to spend an amount of merit. Right? If it wasn't for merits, you wouldn't have a meal today. So when you consume a meal, you are consuming merit. Now how do you fill that? The amount you drew from your merit account. Simple answer. Do a transfer of merits before you draw out. Because a transfer of merits is one of the meritorious deeds. So now, when you draw on the account, you have already put back in. So therefore, it's like before you cut a tree, they say plant 2 trees. Likewise, before you draw on the account, put back in. Now you will forever have enough for you, your family, and everybody else. There's also another angle to this which I mentioned to you very briefly some time ago. That is, in today's day and age, with everything becoming so materialistic, and including farmers who, for reasons unfortunately beyond their control, they're beginning to become more interested in the monetary gains that they can make, the financial advantages that they can gain through their cultivations. So what happens is, with all of the insecticides and various other chemicals that are being used today to grow crops, why? Because they want to get more for their money. This is what happens when money becomes everything. To get more for their money, people begin to forget their duty and obligation towards others. People begin to forget going the extra mile. People begin to forget that their first and foremost duty is service to others and turning frowns upside down. People forget that. And money becomes the number one venture. So what happens then is the whole system starts to collapse. Back in those days, our people were very healthy. Our ancestors, they lived much longer than we did. And they lived healthy lives. Our ancestors didn't know what cancer was because they didn't have it back then. I'm talking a long time ago. And various other ailments and diseases that we have to suffer from today, much of which are caused by the diet that we take, did not exist back then. Because back then, man knew that his first and foremost duty was his service to others, not service to oneself. But today, all of that has changed. Today, money has become everything. In the pursuit of sensual pleasures, money has become the answer. So in order to gain as much money as one possibly can, to fill their bank accounts with as many zeros as possible, people go to great lengths to cause damage and harm to others and to gain their wealth, disregarding what damage it inflicts on others. So this is what has happened today. I think you will know this more than I do. There's a lot of this in the media today. Every other newspaper or news article you will come across will talk about how much the things we eat today are more poison than nutrition. So where do we change this? Do we start to go picketing and complain to the governments, ask them to change their ways and means? Do we hold up placards and walk around town hall and start protesting? No, I think we have the Buddha's way. We don't need to resort to such low levels. We have better ways to address these problems, because we have the universal currency of merit. By doing a transfer of merits, the blessings that we transfer to all of them is a power that is very potent. That power, that meritorious power, enables those who are in the line of production, that bring the meal to our plates, to achieve their wishes. It helps them to bring a good crop, a good harvest. That is the power of the merits and the blessings that go with it. So the more they get, the less they begin, the less they want to, the less they'll need to even add poison to your food or use various other chemicals to contaminate the food that you eat. And also the thoughts that they will begin to, the way that they think will begin to change. In future sermons I will help you understand that actually the thoughts that we experience are simply the vipakas of karmas. These are the results of deeds. So the thoughts that these people who are involved in the food production lines will be thoughts of goodwill and kindness, not malice and hatred. So as that begins to change, then they will begin to rethink. They can't stop it. It will happen. Because there's no doer here. It's simply cause and effect. They will change. They can't stop it. If we change, the world will change. As they say, I think it's what Mahatma Gandhi once put it, be the change you want to see. So if you want to see people becoming good, if you want to stop people from contaminating your commodities, the food that you take, the water that you drink, and everything else in between, how about we change? Let us be grateful for what they give us. Let us take a moment to transfer the blessings that of the merits that we have accumulated. Because after all, we would not be able to listen to this sermon today if it was not for the meal that you took a moment ago. You would not be able to listen to the sermon today if it was not for the technology that you are making use of today. So therefore they are all deserving of the merits and the blessings that come with it. All those people who have supported and pulled their weight in putting all that together, so that today you are able to reap the best rewards that life can offer you. So hopefully that helps you understand why it is that I asked you to start doing a transfer of merits. It's something we do at the monastery every single day. We don't skip a day. So you can understand then everyone who's involved in putting a meal in front of us. That includes obviously all of you. All of you who take great pains and efforts to give alms to the Mahasangha, who come to the monastery when possible, or in times where it's not possible to come and meet us, or to come to the monastery through other means, give alms to the Mahasangha, to feed our hunger. We transfer merits to all of you every day, both before our meal and after the meal. Because that is our duty to you. Because what you are trying to do, we understand, is turn a frown upside down. So, if you have started doing it, then please continue to do it. And if you haven't done it as yet, I suggest from today onwards, take a note of the wording on there. It doesn't have to be word for word. If you miss a word, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But just get the idea, at least, if you can't remember word for word. But if you can, take a printout, take a screenshot, and keep it on your dinner table. Or stick it on the wall where you have your dinner. And then everyone in the family, if you have a habit of having meals together, which I did suggest you do, particularly during the time of this lockdown period where you are able to have that opportunity, right? All of you together can read it out once. You can either read it out aloud, or if you're not comfortable doing that, you can read it in your mind. Or perhaps the breadwinner of the family, maybe the father or perhaps the mother, either one of you can read it out to the rest of the family, so you're all able to join in. And in that moment in time, what you want to be doing is actually mentally be doing what it says in those words. So to transfer the merits you have all acquired to all those who have supported you and helped you and assisted you to bring that meal to you, both man and beast, and to be grateful to their contribution. So let's start doing that. Believe you me, if you start doing that over time, you will begin to see benefits. You will begin to reap rewards, not just in the short term but also in the long term. We don't have to have everyone in this world doing all the good things. If we just start ourselves, if one person, you change. I will take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired to all those who are deserving of the merits. So first and foremost then, let us all take a moment once again to remind ourselves that it is because of the Supreme One, the Supremely Enlightened One, the Perfect One, the Omniscient One, the Magnificent One, the Infinitely Virtuous One, that we have the gift of Dhamma, and the Bhikkhu Bhikkhunis, Upasaka Upasikas, who since time immemorial protected and preserved the teaching of the Buddha and passed it down through the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is available to us today to study, understand and comprehend and achieve our liberation. Let us also take a moment to transmit to all the members of the Mahasangha, wherever they may be resident throughout the world, those who have dedicated themselves to achieving their liberation, but also to commit their precious time towards the liberation of all of us, you and I. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us also take a moment to transmit to Guru Swami Mahanse, as well as all the other monks who are resident at this monastery, and the Anagarikas, as well as the Anagarikas who are attached to the monastery. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have today been born in woeful states, be able to redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. And may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to our parents, our siblings, our teachers, our uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces, grandparents, anyone and everyone who might have in this life helped us, supported us, assisted us in any way, shape or form that was possible to them. May they all rejoice in the merits that is available. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. And may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons, and those who have predeceased us, our ancestors, our forefathers. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, for anything and everything that they will have done to help better our lives, to become the people we are today, to help us move from goodness to greatness. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to those who might have lost their lives in the long war that ensued in Sri Lanka, both be their friend or foe. If any of them are today in seek of merits, may they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the armed forces as well as the police force. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, as well as those who might have lost their lives in the recent pandemic, as well as all other natural disasters. Both all men, women and children who might be seeking of merits today, all of them will have at some point been mothers and fathers to us. Being grateful to the service that they have rendered to us, let us transfer the merits that we have all acquired to them. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in woeful planes, they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. And may through the power of these merits they abstain from the meritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all those who take great efforts to disseminate the teaching of the Buddha throughout the world, to make these teachings available to all of them. Those who may be hard of hearing and therefore transliterate these sermons and make it available to the masses, and make great efforts to letting others know of the availability of these sermons and spreading the word. Perhaps some of you are here today because of the efforts of those. So may they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, and may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the power of all the merits that we have all acquired today, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahatun Mahanses and Arahat Mehenin Mahanses in this land, in our very lives itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the power of all the merits that we have all acquired today, we be able to become one of those Arahatun Mahanses, one of those Arahat Mehenin Mahanses in this life itself, and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Raga ginnen midetva, Dvesha ginnen midetva, Moha ginnen midetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen, Sukhita taravetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen, Sukhita taravetva. Mamada siyalu loka, siyalu satvayo, Nibbana Parama Sukhayen Sukhitatara Vetma. Nibbana Parama Sukhayen Sukhitatara Vetma. Nibbana Parama Sukhayen Sukhitatara Vetma. Raga Gini Niveva Desha Gini Niveva Moha Gini Niveva Nivan Sapa Labeva Nivan Sapa Labeva Nivan Sapa Labeva. Tunruwange suvisi ananta mahaguna belen silu loka silu sattevama Nibbana Paramasukhen Sukhitatara Vetva. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of desire. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of aversion. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of delusion. May I and all beings in all worlds attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all forever. We will conclude the sermon on that note. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all.